I'm using a new software here to try and help to introduce you into my practice. Maps are very important for me. They help me to locate myself, and maybe also my artistic practice is all about locating myself. To begin with, let's look at where we are today now. So let's zoom in. We're in France. Now we're near Guéret, which is here, and there. Now we're here, the cultural centre, Le Métive. Okay, there's a little picture of the bridge with the river here running underneath us, and this river here under the bridge. This bridge is, in fact, I think, quite interesting. We can maybe talk about that later on. Okay, so let's zoom back out again. The place that I live is over here near Nantes, and I live in a little village which is called La Varenne, which is just about there, and I'll just zoom in. This in a sense is my world. This is where I live. And I've lived there with my wife and my daughter for 4 years. I came to France in 2001, and it's a small place. This is my studio. Let's see now, we're going live here. All right, that's my street. And if we turn around, that is my studio. And that's where I work and do a lot of, everything basically. Okay, let's zoom out of that. Back up into space, and that's the Loire, you can see there. Let's just go back to map. Okay, now I've lived in France for about 18 years, and before that I lived up here in the United Kingdom. I lived in Glasgow, and I spent about 5 years in Glasgow. I did my master's degree in Glasgow, and Glasgow formed a lot of my ideas about art. Also down here in Sheffield, which you can't see, where I did first degree in art. And that was very important to me because that was a very conceptual place, and I'll show you some pictures of that. So my artistic education began when I was 34 years old in Sheffield. Now, I wasn't born in this part of the United Kingdom. This country is often referred to as England, but in fact it's made up of 4 countries. There's Scotland, England, Wales. Now, there's one other country, and that's this one. This is Northern Ireland. Now, I was born here in Larne, and I'm technically Irish. And we'll just go up here. I was born in this small place called Larne. Now, my parents came from Belfast, and my mother was born in Belfast, but my father was born over here in Winnipeg, which is just about... Winnipeg is here in Manitoba in Canada, and my father was born there, and my grandfather and my grandmother emigrated back over to Ireland when my father was 5 years old. They took the boat. Now, my grandfather was a Canadian, and he fought in France in the Première Guerre, the First World War, and at that time he met my grandmother, who lived in Ireland. And they got married, went back to Canada, and then during the American Depression came back to Ireland. My father grew up in Belfast, met my mother, they moved to Larne, then I was born, and then they moved to England near Manchester for economic reasons. My father had a better job, so I grew up in England. Now, my relationship with France started probably when I was about 18 years old, when I left school and hitchhiked through London down to here, across the channel to France. This was the first time I'd ever been in France. I was 18 years old and I knew nothing about France. And my destination was down here. I was heading to a place called Chamonix. I'd never been to Chamonix, but I was absolutely obsessed with mountains and escalade, alpinism, all that sort of thing. So I went for the summer down to Chamonix and started to climb in these mountains. And that was my the focus of my life, really. Later on, when I became an artist, these things started to come back into my work. And later on, I'll talk about this frontier here and how that became a very important aspect of my work, and also the work of Dan Shipsides, who I work with. We have a collaboration called Shipsides and Beggs Projects, and also this frontier here, and I'll talk about that. A little bit about Venice. We did a work in Venice for the last Biennale, the Venice Biennale. I'll speak about a work walking from my village near Nantes all the way to the summit of Mont Blanc, and also this frontier here. This is the frontier between Northern Ireland and Southern Ireland. This seems a very insignificant border frontier, but it's in fact very, very significant. With Brexit, this frontier is going to be the connection with Europe. Ireland is Europe. Northern Ireland will be maybe not Europe very soon. And this line is causing many, many problems. Dan lives in Belfast. So we're working together as a Shipsides and Beggs project on this frontier, which we will then, when the work's finished, we will exhibit in Washington. But what is interesting is my intervention on planet Earth is mainly just in this area. I've not been anywhere else. All of my work is here. But what is interesting is that migration occurs to the west. It follows the sun in most cases. And a lot of migration went from Europe to the States, and then that culture came back again. Another large migration occurred from Africa to the States with slavery, and a lot of that culture has come back again. And I'm very interested in this movement between America and Europe, and also Africa, and how that has in some way shaped my mental landscape. Okay, I think that's enough for now. Okay, I've talked too long. We'll get on with the rest of the presentation.